That morning, Barbara called me at work and told me she was taking the day off because she was going shopping. Therefore, she will return home later than usual. When she arrived home, sexy dressed in a red top, short black skirt, dark brown stockings, and high heels, she was almost 2 hours late. But she didn't have a shopping bag, and she said, "It didn't have what I wanted. For a number of reasons, we haven't been in bed for the past week. So I hope the evening would end well for Barbara and me." First, we had our usual Friday family meeting with the kids. While the kids were going to bed, Barbara and I had a pre-prepared romantic dinner. In the bedroom, as we were undressing for bed, she surprised me by wearing her sexiest lace lingerie and stockings instead of pantyhose. At first, I was happy and very excited, and because I thought she was preparing me for great sex. But when I started to caress her, she surprised me again by rejecting all my attempts at foreplay. Then she gave her usual Friday excuse. "Forgive me, but after a hard week and a busy day, I'm too tired to think about it. Can I quickly take a shower and go to bed?" I was very disappointed and said, "What is this busy day? Is shopping, enjoying a Friday night with your family, having drinks and dinner with me such hard and boring work for you? Are you going to take a shower after your weekly lovemaking out of mercy?" Instead of answering me, she forgot about the quick shower and went straight to the shower. When she finally returned, I was already lying in bed with my back to her. She obviously changed her mind because she said, "Okay, I agree with your whining, but ejaculation is very important for you, and I'm tired of everything except hand job. No, now there is no point. If you already have everything you want from other people, I'm sorry to bother you. Don't worry about me. I'm just a stupid husband," I said, and continued to lie with my back to her. "Someone must be in a very bad mood," she said. But I didn't want to answer. Of course, after my accusation, I couldn't sleep. This was the first time in our marriage, so I expected a much stronger reaction from Barbara. My thoughts began to swirl around what had happened between me and my usually beloved wife. The first question was, did I do something wrong that made her stop loving me? Or did she find something better? But after much thought, I could not understand what it could be. The next question was why Barbara wore her sexiest lingerie to work and to the store. And even if I had, I would have gone shopping altogether because I didn't buy anything. And this has never happened before either. So, after much thought, my only reasonable guess was that she was involved in some completely different matter. She was probably in bed with her lover during a stressful shopping spree and did not use condoms. She didn't dare risk me finding out about it by getting sloppy seconds. I started thinking about our sex life over the past few months, and after some reflection, I had no doubt that due to headaches and bad days at work, time was much less than before. After all these bad feelings, I went to the kitchen to have a cup of tea and used the calendar on my smartphone to refresh my memory. I noticed traces of a pattern in our dwindling sex life, which now only happened on Saturday evenings and a few times on Sunday mornings. It was clear that something had gone wrong between Barbara and me, and that everyday life was clearly meant for someone else. This week she saw a very sexy lingerie for the first time and was late home. This means that she was clearly at some kind of party or celebration. However, whatever it was, it had to be brought into the light, even if the cost was our marriage. One of Barbara's women's magazines recently published a simple Gallup poll, according to which about 50% of married women admitted to cheating. This got me thinking about the rumors about how cheated husbands behave differently when they find out they've been cuckolded. A small number of husbands were turned on by their wives cheating and wanted her to do it again. Some husbands didn't care whether she slept on the side or not. Several husbands have ended up in prison because they were excessively cruel in their acts of revenge. Poor weaklings. Husbands cried when their wife cheated, but did not dare to do anything about it. Some average husbands might forgive their wife for a one-time mistake, but would leave her if she had a long-term affair. I must say that the last opinion seemed to me the most appropriate. In the morning, Barbara dropped her snarky comments about our unsuccessful lovemaking. The previous evening, and our family went shopping. Things went my way when a tabloid newspaper ran a front-page story about how one of the most famous singers in this country left her husband just 2 years after their big wedding. She told all the people that he cheated and she could not live in a marriage without trust. Of course, I bought this paper. During a coffee break at home, I showed Barbara a different side of myself and said, I would prefer to immediately leave my cheating husband than continue a relationship with him. Do you agree that there seems to be a serious problem in our marriage that needs to be resolved as soon as possible? Do you attach such great importance to yesterday's little problem? Does it still bother you that much that I get tired sometimes? She said with an angry expression on her face. I was determined that it was now or never to bring our problems into the light. There was no evidence against her, only circumstantial evidence. But I decided to accept all the expected consequences and accuse her of treason. In response to her comments, I said, yes, it still bothers me that you are so tired of your usual weekly schedule. And it still baffles me why you would dress like an upper-class prostitute in sexy lingerie and go on so-called shopping trips to work. What the hell does that mean? Is it my fault that I didn't find anything interesting? She exclaimed. I'm sure you found something more interesting. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm convinced you're having an affair with a horny jerk. Isn't that right? I don't see any other reasons why you refuse to have sex with me on weekdays, except for your slutty underwear and failed attempts at love on Saturday. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, this gave me confidence that I was on the right path. But this feeling was not enough to break up with her. Barbara was somewhat shocked when she realized that I was not joking. She couldn't think of an offensive comment, so she simply said, I'm really sorry. Are you crazy reading this scandalous newspaper? I just said. I continued, isn't it time to pull all the skeletons out of the closet and start living on? Rest assured, sooner or later I will get to the bottom of your affair. Wouldn't it be better for both of us to face the facts and continue to do what's best for our lives now? She was still too stunned by the surprise to say anything. You must be seeing ghosts in daylight. I've never cheated on her, and it's so weird to be tired on a Friday night after a long, stressful week, isn't it? Is not it? At work you are as sexy as a high-class prostitute, but in marriage you are as cold as an icy faucet. I think it's a little strange. When I answered, she angrily left the room and avoided me for the next few hours. On Saturday night, our friends Gwen and Douglas, who have children the same age as ours, invited our family over for dinner. Our quarrel was not resolved, but we decided to go. Gwen asked Barbara and I what we would do. It turned out that she had obtained 4 very rare tickets. We got 2 of these tickets. I surprised everyone. I am very grateful to Gwen, but unfortunately, Barbara and I are now living one day at a time. Therefore, we cannot plan for the future. All 3 looked at me in surprise, and Barbara exclaimed, what do you mean? Barbara is exactly what I was talking about today. We must destroy the skeleton before moving forward, I said. Gwen looked at me and asked, what's happened? I answered, it's better to ask Barbara why we don't have a bed. I suspect that Barbara is cheating on me. Gwen smiled and asked, you are sure? No, of course not. Our problem is much more serious. Very strong circumstantial evidence convinced me that Barbara was having an affair. So I want to make a fair deal here and now. If I'm wrong about Barbara, I promise to go with her to this show and pay for tickets, hotel, and food for the 4 of us from my gaming account. But if you can show me proof of this, here and now, Barbara is cheating on me. I will serve her with divorce papers on Monday morning. I'm tired of her crap. Douglas says, that's sweet, but I don't think she means it. I am convinced that Barbara is innocent. I look forward to your kind offer, Gwen said. A smile appeared on Barbara's face, but she said nothing. Then I said, I'm serious. I keep my promises. I went out into the hall, took Barbara's purse, handed it to her, and said, Barbara, I'm sure your cell phone is in this purse. Could you give it to me and tell me the password? If there is no sign of fraud on this phone, I promise to keep my promise to go to the show. But if I find something dangerous in it, or you refuse to give me the phone before I open it and delete something from its memory, I will consider this phone as evidence. I'll file for divorce on Monday. This offer is valid for 3 minutes, and only if you give me your mobile phone unopened and undamaged. I took the phone, set the timer for 3 minutes, and waited. Gwen said to Barbara, "Give him the phone." I screamed. Douglas screamed. But I didn't take her phone, because she grabbed her purse and ran out of the house without saying a word. Both Gwen and Douglas looked at me in surprise. "What will you do now?" No, I didn't know anything because I didn't know her password. As I said, I'm probably the last person who knows anything about this. Gwen must have heard the gossip, right? I asked. Gwen replied, "This is true. But I promise I'll let you know if anything happens to me." "What are you going to do?" "What should I do?" "I'll return home to my children, keep my word, and divorce my cheating wife," I said. Douglas asked, "If Barbara is innocent, will you really pay my travel expenses?" "Barbara was my true love, and I would rather miss the match than lose her." Douglas continued, "I didn't know that you were such an avid gambler to take such a big gamble. Don't forget that I am a lousy player who lost both the game and my marriage. Perhaps even Barbara would have been a failure if her lover had been married and not cared about her. But I'd rather be a lousy loser than a pathetic cuckold accepting a cheating wife. My pride won't allow this." I took the kids home. As expected, Barbara was not there. But to my surprise, she returned an hour later with red eyes. She asked if she could talk to me about our problems. She agreed, and we sat down at the kitchen table after the kids had gone to bed. "Are you happy that you made me look like a cheating bitch in front of my friends? It's time for me to find out the truth. Are you a shameless woman and cheating on me?" "No, I'm not shameless. But I can no longer deny that I'm cheating on you with another man. Are you happy that you don't have to pay for Gwen and Douglas's travel to their shows?" "Am I happy?" "No, absolutely not. Because today is one of the worst days of my life. So there is little reason for joy. My simple mind can only feel disappointment and emptiness at what I have lost. I thought I had a happy family. How could you do this to them? Children will lose the most from all these shocks." She said, "Please don't burn all your bridges until we discuss what can be done to save our marriage. I love you so much, and there is still so much potential in our marriage." I asked, "Why did you do this? Was I really such a bad husband and lover for you that you had to spread your legs in front of another man? Or are there several of them? Please understand that this is just a little romantic fling that happens once in a lifetime, and does not limit my love for you and our children. Of course, family comes first for me, and I promise that I will again become your faithful and loving wife if this happens. Who is he? Or are they girlfriends? How long did you meet on the sidelines and obviously without a condom? Did you receive him in our bed?" I asked. Of course, one man and I just have strong feelings for each other. I can promise that we really did our best for a long time to resist any temptation. But at a press conference a month or two ago, we couldn't deny our feelings any longer. So we took the plunge and admitted them. Our feelings are very strong, but we agreed that our relationship will be secret and for a limited time. Now it doesn't matter to me who he is. To be honest, he's just the main man in my life, and at this point, it doesn't matter who he is. Nonsense. Of course it is important. I will find this serpent who desecrated my family and make sure he gets what he deserves. If he is married, I will ask his wife why her disgusting husband does not make love to her on weekdays. And if so, if he is giving her what he is clearly forbidden to give me, then it is time to undergo a course of treatment that will save him." I continued, "After you broke up with Glenn and Douglas, did you immediately go to him to end the shameful affair? Or are you going to celebrate with him that you are now free and single? You don't have to waste your time loving me sweetly every Saturday night. A future where you could be his legal slut would be wonderful, wouldn't it?" "No, we didn't meet today. I just spoke to him briefly on the phone to let him know that you know our secret and are unhappy about it. I am married to my beloved husband. I love you very much and sincerely hope that our marriage is strong enough to overcome this temporary problem. Calm down and understand that if you violate it, it will be fatal for you and for our family," she said. I never thought Barbara was stupid, but I was beginning to worry that her lover had blown her brains out. I answered, "Are you saying that your vile lover is married and you didn't want to bother his family? You seem to have no qualms about destroying your own family." Obviously, you care more about your lover and his family than about me and our children, don't you? Or is he blackmailing you or forcing you to become a prostitute? I asked her. Barbara began to sob. Like I said, this is just an innocent short romance, and it will end soon.
You, James?
She didn't stop deceiving me as soon as she got caught, did she? Are you going to continue to follow this damn pimp as if nothing happened? Rest assured. Calm down, please. My friend has powerful friends and violence will cause serious problems for our family. When our love decides everything, I will become your loving wife and promise to be faithful to you all my life. Are you saying that violence irritates you? Is your fornicator threatening me? Rest assured, he will pay dearly. You promise to be a faithful wife. Faithful to your lover? Dear Barbara, don't you understand what a disgusting, cheap girl he has turned you into? Even if there was a real devil in him, I screamed as loud as I could. Obviously, Barbara realized that I would never consider her infidelity a romantic fling. So she began to fear the consequences of the affair and ran into the bedroom, screaming at the top of her lungs. After a nearly sleepless night in the guest room, I left early Sunday morning. I left Barbara a short note. I'm going fishing and will be back later this afternoon. Of course, I was not in the mood to fish. Instead, I decided to drive to a small town on the coast. There, I found a childhood friend's guest house, where the room I had reserved via SMS the night before was waiting for me. I arrived there in time for breakfast and slept soundly before a wonderful dinner with my hosts. Feeling better, I went for a leisurely walk and thought about the future. I was disappointed in myself for being a naive weakling who did not see any pattern in Barbara's excuses for refusing sex, and did not suspect that this was the case. However, I understood that, apart from the lack of a bed, there was no other evidence, and I presented my arguments. But I had to pat myself on the back for blaming her as soon as I saw the first signs. An obviously fake shopping trip in sexy lingerie and a late return home. And to my surprise, less than 24 hours after my first accusation, Barbara admitted to cheating. There was no evidence of her cheating, but I was able to get her to confess without resorting to violence. If her affair had been limited to that shopping Friday, we would have had a better chance of moving on together, even if it took a while. But as the affair continued, instead of ending it immediately, she foolishly said something stupid about immediately ending her innocent romantic feelings. In my opinion, this was complete nonsense. My mobile phone was turned off for a long time, so after a while I sat on a large rock and checked it. There were 5 missed calls and 3 messages from Barbara, all with the same content. Call me as soon as you can, Barbara. I'll be home late. See you tomorrow. Barbara. No meaningful conclusions about dear ones or loved ones. Then the phone died again. Divorce would be bad for the children, I decided. But as long as Barbara cheated on me and allowed her mistress to dictate the rules of sex in our marriage, this was the only solution. Barbara wouldn't admit that last point and probably wouldn't agree that I was right, but I was 100% humiliated. That evening, when I checked my cell phone, there were several missed calls and a voicemail from a sobbing Barbara. I apologize for hurting you and the children. Of course, my affair is over, and you are now my beloved husband and will always be my one and only love. I regarded this confession 2 months late as a confession on the gallows, and I didn't care. If she had ended the affair immediately after the press conference, it would have remained her secret. Or if her fake shopping trip had been a one-off, then she might have had a chance. But 2 months was not enough. And although she had clearly come to terms with everything, it no longer meant anything. When I returned home, I was relieved to find Barbara asleep. I slept in the spare room and left for work before she woke up. I left a short message on the kitchen table. Barbara, we'll talk this afternoon. As soon as court opened on Monday morning, I went to the courthouse to file my divorce papers. I filled out the forms at work and went to Barbara's office to ask her to sign them. She refused and started crying loudly. I left her office, went back to court and filed for divorce without her signature. There wasn't much difference, maybe just a delay of a couple of weeks. Barbara didn't come home after work, but her sister Annie called and said she urgently needed to talk to me about Barbara. I invited her to come home immediately, and she agreed. Annie came and said that Barbara was at her parents' house and completely devastated. Annie wanted to hear the truth about what happened between Barbara and me, and I told her. Barbara admitted that she cheated on me with her lover and obviously was going to continue the relationship. After I found evidence of the affair, she didn't even try to stop it when I talked to her. I can't deal with my slut wife who is going to continue dating and sleeping with the man she cheated on me with. So divorce is the only way out. He is married? If so, does his wife accept their affair? Don't ask me, better ask his wife. His wife's name is Maria Brahm. It now became clear that Barbara was having an affair with Edward Brahm, an accountant at her workplace. She had met him several times and was under the impression that he was a slightly effeminate man who dressed well. I thought it would be a good idea to have a serious talk with Edward and Maria Brahm, so I asked Annie to look after the children while I visited them for a while. To my joy, she replied, "Please understand that the children need you right now." I went to Edward's house in a respectable area. A few seconds after the bell rang, a 7-year-old girl opened the front door. I asked her if her mom and dad were home, to which she replied, "Yes, my mom is there." When Maria came to the door, I introduced myself and said that I wanted to discuss something with her. She was a very beautiful woman. She invited me into the kitchen and sat me on a chair at the table. I did this and said, "I have sad news. My wife Barbara, who works at the same company as your husband, admitted that she has been cheating on you and me for the past 2 months." She turned pale and asked, "Are you sure? Because your husband convinced my wife to limit me to bed only on Saturdays, so that she could be a lustful nymphomaniac during their obviously kinky sex on Fridays." This made me suspicious, and she did not deny it when I accused her of cheating. After talking to Edward that evening, she confessed everything. There was no remorse, no doubt. "By the way, where is Edward?" I asked. Maria turned pale and answered in a frightened voice, "He left." "What are you going to do about this sad matter?" "Edward already knows, because today at my wife's work, I gave him the divorce papers. I think all his colleagues at all workplaces already know, because there was a big fuss. Edward told me what happened at work, but what do you know? I do not know anything. I have friends at Edward's work, but no one wanted to tell me anything. Maria and I agreed to share all the additional information, and I left her with a strange feeling. How could that idiot Edward cheat on his beautiful wife and have an affair with Barbara, who was no better than his own wife? When I got home, I told Annie about my conversation with Edward's wife. She had to decide whether or not to tell Barbara what I had done. Barbara should have contacted me about the divorce. The next morning at work, Susan Lynn called me and asked me to have lunch with Barbara to discuss important issues affecting me. I knew she was a beautiful divorced woman, and I was curious what she wanted, so I easily agreed to her proposal. We met in a small restaurant, and after some polite small talk, she said simply and directly, "I'm not going to do that. I would do the opposite. I'm going to rent a furnished apartment for myself for a while, until I feel like I did the right thing by moving in with my boyfriend, Alf. This apartment will suit both you and Barbara." I was surprised that rumors of my divorce spread so quickly. Of course I was intrigued. Susan told me about fair rent and other benefits. She proposed to me because she trusted me and Barbara to look after her apartment. When I got back to work, I called Annie and told her that I had bought a furnished apartment until Barbara moved in with Edward Brahm somewhere. But Annie said that was impossible because Edward had gone completely crazy when he returned home from a bowling match to find his packed suitcase in the driveway, with a man in a secure TOS uniform guarding the front door. During a frantic phone call with Barbara, he accused her of being a prostitute. Annie was interrupted by urgent business and arranged to meet him later that evening. She came as expected and told him about Barbara's condition. She said she nearly fainted after Edward's frantic call and took an extra day off from work. Annie, who was married and lived only a few hundred meters from her parents, spent a lot of time with them, supporting Barbara. Barbara told them all about her affair with Edward. What interested me was that Barbara and Edward used the small apartment next to the furniture store as a love nest when they had very long lunches on Fridays. According to Edward, the rent was shared by a secret gang of businessmen with an online booking system. Edward boasted that it was much cheaper and less noticeable than a hotel room. Barbara even went to a very famous historic hotel to celebrate Edward's birthday, which was the following Sunday, and confessed to Annie about the family. The family was a fake, shopping Friday. Not far from here, they had a long lunch and made love in the room where one of the royals of the past slept. Barbara realized that her sexy lingerie was a mistake, which made me suspicious enough to end the marriage. Before leaving, Annie packed her suitcase with clothes and other things Barbara needed. I told her that if Barbara wanted, I would tell her about the divorce and the children as soon as possible. It was also clear that Edward had powerful friends. Instead of helping Edward, I needed to find something to turn him against me. That evening, after much thought, a brilliant idea came to my mind. I called my old friend Anders and asked his opinion. Anders is a computer geek and much more than a regular user like me. He immediately appreciated my idea and promised to work on it. The next day, after a quick lunch, we decided to visit Edward's love nest. It was easy to find, just like Annie told me. It was located right on the street and was originally used as an office, but has now been converted into a small apartment. Indeed, it was a very secluded place for secret sexual entertainment. The door was made of heavy wood and contained a mailbox and a small brass sign that read, "Patent Office." Undoubtedly, Edward's gang created the perfect place for the secret pleasures of extramarital love. Back at work, I called Annie to set up a babysitter appointment while I went shopping after work. She begged me to do something about Edward's porn gang. She also promised not to tell Barbara or anyone else what she told me about the sex nest, or that she looked after me when my conduct was necessary for that service. In gray overalls and a baseball cap, everyone considered me a regular customer of a large construction and installation store where they could find everything they needed. On Thursday evening, Anders called me and said he was ready to go. A few minutes later, he replied, "The action is completed." I thanked him and promised to report to him as soon as I learned the results. However, most likely, nothing special. Early the next morning, I showed up at the front door of Edward Brom's orphanage. Once again dressed in overalls and a baseball cap, I used a cordless drill driver to secure the door with 12 single-sided hardened steel screws. The next item was a sheet of stainless steel measuring 50 x 30 cemeteries with bright red writing on it. A beautifully furnished room is rented for 2 hours. For more information, call Edward Brahms on 0899 7744299. The sign is also secured with single-sided hardened steel screws. Single-sided screws are used for non-removable security equipment. Especially designed heads can be screwed in, but not unscrewed. It was the phone number for the office where Barbara and Edward worked. Anders and I assumed there would be unrest at Edward's place of work because he had sent out 250 emails to employees and other high-ranking people in the city. The letters contained a Photoshop image of the new Love Nest door sign and the text portion of the following note. "Dear married friend, I know how difficult it is to find 100% secluded places for private erotic pleasure, especially if your lucky lady or stallion is married. Misbehavior in local hotels is the cause of many costly divorces, but you can avoid it with a very cozy, beautifully appointed love hotel in the heart of our city. Rent a room for 2 hours, and you'll receive a door code on your smartphone that you can use to get a free hotel room. For more information and additional services, call during business hours. Photo of Edward Brom's private apartment 889 7,740,4299. Why should people care whether a watchman or a construction worker opens the door for them? No one passed me in the few minutes it took to fix the door. Of course, Edward Brahms and his ilk would soon be outraged, but I didn't care about those bastards. I knew nothing about what had happened until Anders called me at 1:30 in the morning. He laughed and said, "We locked Tommy Shawnee in this sex chamber, and he still hasn't come out. Should I also put money into the work? Rumor has it that a curious crowd has gathered outside, and a radical feminist reporter from the local newspaper is waiting for an answer." After thinking about my assumption, Anders advised me to put the money in the pool. The apartment had double doors, so the locked lovers could not hear anything while I was drilling the doors. Tommy Shawnee was a 53-year-old bachelor, chairman of the local Green Party, and a troublemaker who dissented on most issues on the city council. There were rumors that he was a womanizer and that what is not between the ears is between the legs. Neither Anders nor I wanted to be seen in the crowd of curious people when the love room opened. However, the notorious Shawnee had a reputation for ruining marriages, so it would be a lie to deny our curiosity about this woman. I didn't win the bet, but Anders and I were very surprised when the name was announced shortly after 1 p.m. It was Alice Neville, a very beautiful blonde, 43 years old, leader of the local Conservative Party and married to a successful businessman. There is an old saying that love is blind, and most people agreed with it when they found out who she spent the night with in the love room. Later, they discussed why she waited so long to open the door, and it became a public spectacle. Shawnee panicked, called the wrong people, and was blamed for everything. They were the ones who spread rumors about the problem with the door before the right people were found to fix it. Alice's conservatives fired her as chairman, and her husband left her once he found out she had spent the night with Shawnee. Shawnee's political activities were of little interest to anyone, but his feminine prowess made him something of a local hero. So when he went into a bar, he usually received free drinks from some of the regulars. Even more women wanted to see if the rumors about his abilities and physique were true. This forced him to share information with his fans. After some time, Barbara calmed down and signed the divorce papers. We then seriously discussed the issue of joint custody of the children remaining in our home. Barbara and I decided to spend every other week at Susan's house and apartment. Christmas fell the same week that I was visiting Susan, so I invited Barbara to stay at Susan's house with me and the kids that week. She slept in the guest room, and the rest of the family's life was reminiscent of the good old days. I couldn't help it, but it was impossible not to miss her when we were apart again. One evening that week, after the kids had gone to bed and we were sitting in the living room drinking wine and cheese, she started talking about Edward Brahm. He never thought that his wife would find out about his affair. But because I told his wife about this, she kicked him out of the house. This caused him to have something of a mental breakdown. He accused Barbara of being a haunted evil witch who was the cause of all his problems. Of course, this quickly turned their unique and romantic love story into one of regret and hatred. Barbara told me about the gossip at work, Edward's love room, the Neville Shani affair, and all the phone calls that were part of the mailing campaign that gave Edward a new nickname, the Pimp. All this made him a laughing stock among his colleagues. His friends from the apartment gang turned into ex-friends. They held him responsible for the scandal involving poor Alice Neville. They even held Edward responsible for his financial losses and billed him for repairing an expensive door in the apartment. When he refused to pay and his former friends started talking about more disgusting games, he quit his job and left town in search of greener pastures. The next time Barbara and I met was at a New Year's party with friends. We surprised everyone by spending the night together at the same table as Gwen and Douglas. When Barbara and I lived together, our family spent a week in the Canary Islands every February. I encountered an unexpected problem when the children began to ask, "Please, Dad, can Mom come with us?" After arguing, I gave in and asked Barbara. Because I booked the hotel quite late, I only managed to get a family room and not a room with a flat bed, which is the norm. Barbara and I had to sleep in the same bed, but everything worked out. This year we made every effort to have a good week. On our last night at the hotel, I woke up and heard Barbara crying a little. I, of course, became worried and asked her, "Are you sick, or do I need to go to the hospital?" She replied that she was crying. She said while crying, "I'm crying because I'm so grateful and happy for the past week. It was the happiest time of my life, and I will miss you. Please forgive me if I woke you up. I'm not made of stone," so I hugged her and said, "Barbara, it was a wonderful week for us." She looked at me almost shocked and whispered, "This is the best gift since we had children. I love you so much, and I want you to know that I am the happiest woman in the world." Of course, Barbara's screams were not the main reason she was suspended. Throughout the week, it became increasingly clear that Barbara was still my true love. None of those I met during our separation could replace her. Therefore, even before leaving the hotel, I was going to suggest that she never get a divorce,